and now I feel more comfortable. Okay, good. So let me introduce myself. I am Pervez Hoodbhoy. I have been teaching at Quaid-e-Azam University for 46 years. I started in 1973, retired in 10 years ago, and now I teach in Lahore at Foreman Christian College. I am a particle physicist by training, but my interests have diversified. Subsequently, I work in condensed matter physics as well and teach a course in sociology. Okay, so I thought that I would give you a very quick summary of where Pakistan stands in higher education today. The numbers look pretty good. There are something like 195 registered universities, but there are lots of other universities that operate in shopping plazas, in business centers, and they're everywhere. Nobody can count them. Nobody knows what's going on inside them. There's something like 1.6 million students in colleges and universities. So that's about 5% of the eligible age group. The government's commitment to higher education looks pretty good. It was around $300 million given to the Higher Education Commission. The Higher Education Commission came after the University Grants Commission, and so this was in 2002. So the grant was pretty good. This year it's less. It's 40% less because the Pakistani rupee underwent serious devaluation, and there's an economic crunch in Pakistan, which you might know of. Okay, now let me give you a little bit of history of how we got there. I'll do that, and then I'll come to my central point, which is, okay, we have all these universities, but are they real universities? How much value do they add on? And how do you judge the quality of higher education? And here I will look towards you for guidance in the hope that as I write my chapter, I'll be able to include your views in some way or the other. Okay, so now let me go back to 1947. At that time, Pakistan had only one university, and that was Punjab University. That had 644 students, just one university. There was something like 25 colleges spread across the country. So these had been made in the colonial era. Colleges like Foreman Christian College, where I teach now, Government College, Haley College for Commerce, etc., etc. It was a very small number of people who went into higher education. The British didn't think that it was very important to have. And whatever higher education institutions there were, they were concentrated in Lahore. Well, then comes 1947, and it's a pretty bad start. Just one university and these 25 colleges. But what was worse, what made things even more difficult was that pretty much all the faculty, all the senior faculty of these colleges and university, and this one university, was Hindu. Muslims traditionally had been at a disadvantage in education, and we could go back over the history of that, and that's going to be a part of my chapter because it's so absolutely essential to factor that, but not here. Let me simply say that the only Muslims, with a couple of exceptions, who were prominent in academics, the rest were all Hindus. After 1947, they go across to India or migrate to Europe or the United States. And so there is a serious deficit of faculty. Well, that deficit of senior posts doesn't take long to fill because junior members who are Muslim take over, which might be logical, but it wasn't a very good thing because a lot of them weren't really fit for the job. And when you have incompetent people who take over positions, senior positions, well, they tend to be very defensive and they want to keep out those who have genuine talent and learning because they feel insecure, threatened. And so some of the institutions did recover. I would say that Government College Lahore did recover, and it's not in bad shape today. That's 70 years later. But the University of Punjab, which was the only university we had at that time, is now essentially run by the Jamaat-e-Islami and its student wing, and is not in very good shape at all. So that's actually when the rot began. However, with time, some things got fixed up, some things didn't. The number of universities increased, and there are, I would say, two phases to the growth of universities. One being from 1947 up till 2001, and the second phase being from 2002 to the present. Of course, 2001 is a very significant year because that's when 9/11 happened. And 9/11 had, well, terrible consequences for Afghanistan and for other places in the world, Iraq as well. But higher education in Pakistan got a huge bonanza from it. So comes 9/11, and we have something like 45 universities, of which most are public, but a few private ones also. The first private one was in 1984. That was the Lahore University of Management Sciences, and I believe you're going to have two speakers from there after me. And then the next one was the Aga Khan University, which is a medical university, a year later. So about 45 universities at around 2001. The qualities were very uneven. So you could say that LUMS was the elite private university catering to the absolute upper crust of Pakistani society. Well, the upper crust would go to universities outside of Pakistan, to Europe and the United States, but within Pakistan, LUMS was the elite university. Then comes 9/11, and suddenly the West realizes that there's a problem in Pakistan, that its madrasas are turning out Taliban. The Taliban are attacking the United States and Western interests. And so the thought comes about that, well, maybe we should start funding education in Pakistan at all levels, but of course higher education as well. And so within 3 years, the higher education budget increased by something like 350%. Now that sets a world record. So the old structure was dissolved. The old structure was the University Grants Commission, and in its place, by presidential ordinance, the Higher Education Commission was created under the chairmanship of Dr. Ataur Rahman. Now, the idea behind this change was the Higher Education Commission would completely revamp higher education. It would act not just as an accrediting body and a funding body for universities, but it would create new universities. It would disperse research grants. It would send students abroad for PhD degrees. And it would do a lot of things, create data banks, etc., monitor quality, etc. Well, it seemed to make a lot of sense. And I was personally fully supportive of it. But very soon, I could see things going wrong. Now the criterion for judging an academic became purely numerical. How many research papers did you publish? How many PhD theses did you supervise? How many MPhil theses did you supervise? These became numbers that then determined whether or not you were to get promoted, and promoted how high. Well, that's when the crookery started. Paper mills produced rubbish, and to this day produce rubbish. Well, let me give you an idea of how things have changed since the early days. So back in the 70s, when I started teaching at Quaid-e-Azam University, an assistant professor would have 2 research publications, an associate would have 8, and a full professor, 12 research publications. And basically you were promoted with time. But now, during the course of his PhD thesis, you have students producing 5, 10, 15, and as many as 20 research publications. I've been in several PhD vivas. Now they don't invite me anymore. But you ask the simplest question. So this to me is very worrying, that now the criteria is such that only your publications, number of publications matter. Okay, so then the HEC revised it slightly, not by much, but said that we will also look at citations. And that didn't work either. The reason being that there were citation cartels which were formed. So you have a university in Islamabad, and you have colleagues in Lahore or in Karachi or in Multan. Well, you will cite their papers and they will cite your papers. And so this became a joke, and it's still a joke to me. So how you judge quality is not at all an easy matter. Okay, well, you'll say there are foreign organizations. There's Thomson Reuters, there's QS, there's the Times Higher Education something. And surely when you have overseas organizations, they must be doing something right. Well, I got to tell you something, folks. They don't.
Professor Pervez, I'm aware of time, and I'm also want to alert you that your presentation is focusing very strongly at the moment on higher education, and you've given us some orientation to that. But I'm wondering whether you would be able to comment on the other dimensions of the chapter contribution for the book, and how you might be able to see that, because your other colleagues are not going to be joining us. I'm not too sure if you're aware of that.
Oh, they're not?
No,
okay.
They're not. No.
Let me just conclude this part, and then I'll come back. And then maybe if there are questions that could be used to explicate some of the things I've said. But to conclude, I don't think that these international ranking organizations have a clue of what's going on in universities in Pakistan. They send out questionnaires and they look at just one thing, which is the number of publications, and that doesn't work. Now, I've got to tell you something really funny. Quaid-e-Azam University, my university, was put at rank 30 in mechanical engineering. But we don't have a mechanical engineering department. Okay. Okay, let me take 5 minutes more and tell you.
And we'll have to ask you to wrap up in those 5 minutes because we have 10 presentations following on. And I'm aware my job is to time keep this session to keep abreast with the connections.
Okay. So should we have Q&A then?
I'd like you to use it as just to hint at perhaps what are the other areas that your colleagues are contributing in the chapter.
Oh, I'm not writing it with them.
All right, okay.
I am writing it by myself.
All right, okay, I apologize. I'm not the coordinator. I'm just the person asked to chair it at the moment. All right, then could I ask you then to summarize your session then?
I think I've pretty much made my point. So if there's no time left, this is fine. Else, if there are questions, I'd be happy to take one or two or as many.
One or two questions. May I have questions from the floor? I have one question here.
Thank you, Professor Hoodbhoy. This is Padma Sarangapani here. I was wondering how the higher education system has responded to inequalities that are there in Pakistani society, and if there are any special policy efforts in that direction.
Well, the inequalities are certainly very much there. The public universities are funded by the government, and the fees there are something like a third of what you would have in private universities. The fees used to be fairly minimal, but in the last 2 or 3 years, they have increased substantially. So now they stand at something like 1/3 of what you would pay in a private university.
Follow up?
Is economic difference, class difference, the main form of inequality that universities are responding to, or?
The inequalities in Pakistan are at many different levels. One is, of course, between the rich and poor in a given province. But as you know, we have 4 provinces. Punjab is by far the richer, and Balochistan is by far the poorer. In Balochistan, there is extreme poverty, and because of that, a lot of resentment also. So the government has tried, but very ineffectively, to address that. Then there is discrimination between different religions, and that's extremely important. That's something that a few people, including myself, have fought for a very long time. This discrimination is in the selection of both teachers and students, and it's unfortunately pervasive.
Education mixed gender, or do you segregate for women?
Okay, so let me tell you how it's worked out over the 45 years that I've taught at Quaid-e-Azam University. I'm still there, sort of, but I don't get paid by them. I get paid by Foreman Christian College. There used to be very few women in public universities, and there were very few private universities, and there was no private university back in 1973. over time, the number of women in universities has increased, and currently it is something like 44% of the total. However, I would not say that they are equal participants in education, because they are restricted in their movements, and the campus culture is such that they are, well, I wouldn't say segregated, but there is a strong tendency towards segregation, one that was not there earlier on. So during the Zia-ul-Haq period, there was a definite effort to have women-only universities. But that didn't work out. However, the dress of women changed, and today there is a lot of headscarves and burqas, which was not the case earlier.
All right, I think I'm going to just ask if there's anyone else who would like to ask a question.
Good morning, Professor Pervez. This is Professor Nurul Absar from Bangladesh. I would like to actually know about teachers' politics and students' politics at Pakistani universities, and about the autonomy and accountability of the higher education institutions. Can you tell us briefly, please?
Yes. Well, in the days of General Zia-ul-Haq, which was 1979 up till 1988, students' unions and teachers' associations were banned. However, subsequently, there was some let-up on teachers, and so you do find teachers' associations at all public universities. Student unions remain banned. Now, the one student association that has survived the ban is the Islami Jamiyat-e-Talaba, which has as its stronghold Punjab University. And I'd say that they pretty much control what goes on in that university, and it has been beyond the power of the Punjab government to rein them in. In terms of autonomy of universities, well, they're autonomous up to an extent, but the purse strings are tied to the Higher Education Commission. This is for the public universities. And so they are bound by the regulations of the HEC, which may or may not be a bad idea, actually. In terms of private universities, they're principally responsible to their owners, and they make their decisions just as they wish to.
Hi, Pervez. This is Leena. So much.
Hi, Leena.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming so late in the night to share about the education system with us. I look forward to your chapter, and maybe I will, because we are out of time, I will connect with you offline and discuss with you a bit more, if that's okay.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. I know that your comments will provoke us to think and continue the discussion, even though you may not be physically present, but I thank you very much for your presentation and ask the House to do so too. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I am going to now move on to our next presenter, and the next presenters are from Bangladesh, and they're presently with us. We're having a shift in focus from higher education studies to really looking at... Professor, would you like to listen into the discussion?
Well, I think it's time for me to go to sleep because it's 12:30.
All right. Okay.
Just past midnight.
So, all right. Thank you. We'll say goodbye to you then.